One of the things that definitely helped Five Nights at Freddy's get itself into the mainstream was definitely its models. Along with its story and gameplay, the models of Five Nights at Freddy's are absolutely amazing, and are for sure one of the most pivotal things to this game's success. It would have been a gamble to choose any other characters besides these ones, and that's why today I want to take a look and see just what these models are made of. And before we get started, I should note that Scott has never publicly released his models for the game that he actually used, so the models that I'll be pulling from today are fan-made, but generally pretty close to what would have been used in the actual FNAF games. But first, there's a few things you need to understand, and that's the difference between a vertices, an edge, and a face, otherwise known as a tri. A vertices is the point at which triangles will meet, or these guys right here. An edge is the lines that make up a triangle, so one triangle would have 3 individual edges. And a face, otherwise known as a tri, is just simply what you can imagine it is, the actual face of the triangle. Now keep edges and faces in mind because I'm going to be bringing them up throughout the video. And to start us off, I want to talk about Freddy. This model right here has over 139,269 faces and 228,658 edges. And this model is very detailed, as you can tell. When we pull up the wireframe here, you can see just how detailed it is. From a far view, it almost looks like his head is completely solid black just from the wireframe alone. And upon closer inspection, you can just see how much detail there really is. Specifically around the shoulder blades, I think it might be a little bit of a waste of polys here, if I'm being honest. Just look at how fine it gets towards the edges. But realistically in the game, this would not matter because the way Five Nights at Freddy's was programmed, it didn't rely heavily on model movement, instead relying more on just photos of the actual models taken prior to the game's release. And we take a look at the ears and see that there's even more polys, just giving that extra definition and roundness around the actual circumference of the ear. The same with the kneecaps as well, a little bit too many polys as we can see. And if you zoom in, you can really see how many polys they used on this. The feet, the arms, the legs, those are all classic, and this model just comes together perfectly in my opinion. Up next, we're gonna move on to Bonnie, whose model also includes the guitar, and this model has a total of 193,396 faces, or tries, and 314,746 edges. This model does borrow quite a little bit from Freddy's model, and will also be repeated on Chica's model as well, i.e. the arms, the hands, the legs to a certain extent, and perhaps it even draws inspiration from Freddy's head to help make Bonnie's. As you can see, this model is way more complex, way more polys being used, and you can tell just in the bow alone that there is so much detail going on here just to make sure that all the rounded edges look completely round. As we look at the eyes as well, it looks like a fractal. As you keep zooming in, more and more polys show up. This is almost way too many polys and a little overkill in my opinion, but we make up for it with the shoulder, a much more reserved, low poly count shoulder. However, the arm right next to it uses quite a lot more polys than the Freddy model used. And now if we take a look at the guitar, we can see that the guitar actually really doesn't use too many polys. I'd assume that this is around a 300 to 400 poly model right here, which is very little considering it's standing next to a 100,000 try model. But overall, this is also a well-made model. Just taking a look head to toe makes it really stand out at how much detail there truly is. And with that, I think we can move on to Chica. Now, Chica's model is very reserved and it only contains 469 faces and 93,542 edges. With way fewer polys, it doesn't actually show. The arms and the legs still look round, the face still looks heavily detailed with the beak showing off extravagant detail. The eyes use far less polys than the Freddy and Bonnie models and still look perfect. As you can see, the feathers on Chica's head actually do have more polys than you might expect, while the head doesn't have nearly as much as previous models. Obviously, this is a very well undercut shoulder too, not nearly as many polys wasted on this model as other previous models. And right here you can see that they actually couldn't reuse the Bonnie and Freddy leg models. They had to make a new chicken leg model to make sense with Chica. It doesn't end up using too many polys for the model though, and it still looks pretty uniform. But overall, this model is really well done, and this has got to be one of my favorite models in FNAF 1. Up next, we take a look at Foxy. This is another beautiful model and takes a lot of different roads than the previous 3 models we looked at. The arms are much thinner, the teeth are much different than previous models, the hands and feet are different, and overall, this animatronic goes for a much different style than the previous animatronics. A lot more of the endoskeleton is revealed in this model, as you can see here, especially in the mouth and around the arms. And if we zoom up close, we can actually see that there isn't too many polys used on the endoskeleton's mouth. I almost feel like there's more polys on these 3 strands of hair than in the whole endoskeleton's skull. As you can see too, this hook contains so many polys. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if 10% of the polys used in this model are simply from the hook alone. As you zoom in, it uncovers more and more hidden polys within it, and honestly seems to just keep going forever. As we can see, there's a lot of exposed endoskeleton because of how Foxy was made. Scott intentionally put rips in the side of Foxy to make him look more decayed, and I think it really just adds to the scary animatronic vibe. The hands are very shovel-like and don't have too much detail as well as we look closer to these guys, but it does leave for a pretty cool robotic looking animatronic model. And finally, we have Golden Freddy, basically a copy of Freddy's model, but retextured and reskinned, and with removed eyes. And this model right here uses the least faces and edges of any model showcased today. This one sits at 46,240 faces, 83,754 edges. And this one's pretty similar to the Freddy model, even though these were probably made by two different people. I'm sure if we got the Scott Cawthon models of both of these animatronics, they would be relatively, if not the exact same poly count. This one goes way more conservative and does not need nearly as many polys to create the curves it needs. As you can see, the eyes are removed from this Freddy model, so that definitely would get rid of some polys for sure. The bow tie also is very sparing on the polys. It maybe could even use a little bit more in this case, as it does look a little ragged and sharp. But other than that, the shoulders, the arms, the chest, the hands, they all look good. Nothing to complain about. The endoskeleton looks as it should, and the feet are copies of the previous Freddy models. So other than that, there's not really too much that deviates from this model and the original Freddy model. But yeah, that's all of the FNAF 1 models. If you guys like this video, I probably will be doing more videos like this in the future. Maybe with more FNAF series, or maybe with other Nintendo series. Let me know in the comments which one you'd prefer to see next. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and give it a like, and I'll see you whenever I see ya. Thanks for watching. Peace.